Hello, friends, and thank you as always for visiting the Legend Sports Universe YouTube channel. Legend Sports Universe, where legends play forever. Just doing a little broadcast tonight as a preview for the Legends. I'm getting all my leagues confused. The Franchise Stars Baseball League. All the other leagues start with Legends Sports Universe, whatever, except for this one. But the Franchise Stars Baseball League Year 2 will be having opening day on Friday. And I spent much of last night and this morning getting the rotations and lineups set up. Doing a couple of changes for this year from how I've previously done things and how I tend to do things here in the Legend Sports universe. As we see Todd B, Cyro329, how are you, my friend? Nathaniel Lentz has joined us. Hoping people will start rolling in a little bit after a few great broadcast night. Dwayne Marks doing some awesome stuff on his channel, and then Beatles Eternally with a great game just now, moments before this, the all-time Phillies and the all-time Dodgers in a great walk-off game. We always love seeing those. Terrific pitchers duel there. So we had a good baseball night here in Sim World. Gary, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. The hardest working man in sim business. I will take that. I don't know if it's accurate, but I'll take it. But I appreciate the kind words as always, my friend. So just going to kind of do, and I'm going to touch on a couple of things, and then I'll just kind of leave it up to the chat if there's stuff that you guys want me to look at, if you want me to check out a couple of things with a couple of teams or matchups or questions you may have or whatever like that. I'll be cool with that. I'm probably not going to go on for too long. If I don't, well, I said that last night. I went on for about an hour talking about the ratings development process. If any of you are interested in how I do that kind of stuff for the FSBL, I did a stream late last night. You can watch here on the channel just about how I go about rating pitchers and hitters and my system for doing that. I had a bunch of people ask me about kind of going under the hood a little bit, and I love talking shop. I've just never done those broadcasts because I never really know how many people would be interested in my doing them. But I figured I would do one, and it was well received, which of course I greatly appreciate. And our good friend Steve Tate was in there, so Steve and I get to talk shop a lot. It's kind of like a foreign language a little bit. The football one, Cyro, man, I'm so on the fence about doing football. I keep on waiting, and I keep thinking of dipping my toe in the water for doing the Franchise Stars League from Madden. It's just gonna, it will be so much work, and I don't know if I want to do that at the moment. So we'll see. I've poked around with it. I dabble in the sheets. Once every couple of weeks, I go into spreadsheets a little bit and try to come up with formulas that I like and stuff like that. So it's possible, but I don't know. It's not something. Even if I do start it, I mean, this project, when I started it, to give you an idea, probably took me about 5 months to really get it where I wanted to get it, and I had a lot of ratings in place already. So a Madden project would really be a very deep dive and real time consuming one for me. But yes, I would be doing for the newer Madden. I would do it either for 23 or 24. But anyway, we'll digress about that and get here into Franchise Stars Baseball League chatter a little bit. So we'll be doing opening day on Friday. I'll do at least 2 broadcasts. I might do 3, depending on time. Should be a really good baseball day. Hello, Bernard. Good to see you, my friend. Thanks for checking in. I hope all is going well with your visit with the family. Look forward to seeing your streams once you are back at it. So it'll depend on how much time I have on Friday. I'll definitely be able to do at least 2. So we'll take a quick look at the schedule of games for that day as the game I'm definitely going to do first, a rematch of the ALCS from year one. The Cleveland Indians will visit the Oakland A's. Cleveland will send their new rookie pitcher Addie Joss joins the Indians for year two, as does Corey Kluber. Pitching was the weak spot for the Indians in year one, so their rotation gets a boost. Joss and Kluber are going to slot in 1 and 2 this year, so the Indians could really be a formidable force in that American League. Joss gets to go up against the year one outstanding pitcher winner, Rube Waddell of the Oakland A's. Waddell went 20-4 last year. Then he was exceptional throughout the postseason. So that kind of marquee matchup will probably be the kickoff broadcast for opening day. And then, I mean, there's a bunch of broadcasts I could do here for the other two. Yankees Orioles, certainly a good one. The Yankees bolstered by Whitey Ford joining the rotation this season for them. Guidry is still the number one starter. Guidry number two in the outstanding pitcher voting in the American League last season behind Waddell. Guidry won 20 games as well. Baltimore gets Boo Powell joins them this year, so he'll be in there. He's made the big club. They've got a couple of other guys, Vern Stevens. I'm trying to remember who else. A little bit lower level guys, but are in the minors coming up through the pipeline for them. So that's a matchup I could do. A couple of other teams interesting. The Detroit Tigers, biggest disappointment in the league to me in year one. But in test sims so far for year two, it looks like the Tigers just had one of those seasons, and if you're a baseball history fan, we've all seen these before, where just a team seems like they should be good and just nothing goes right for them in the season. That's what happened to the Tigers in year one of the FSBL. The pitching wasn't there. The offense wasn't there. It was just a complete top-to-bottom failure by virtually everybody on that Tigers team. They're much better than what they did in season one, and they've been having pretty good results in the tests here in year two. So it could have a nice bounce-back season for the Tigers there. They're an interesting team. Robin Ventura, one of my favorite players of all time, joins the White Sox this season. He'll be their starting third baseman as he replaces Joe Crede, who was abysmal in year one. So Ventura will get the starting nod there. Bouncing around, Kansas City, Minnesota, possibility, both of them. Coming into this season, trying to remember who the new guys are, who they added. I don't remember. Oh, Minnesota adds Joe Cronin this season. The Kansas City Royals, who have had a black hole at third base in year one. It was it Emmanuel Rivera and Joe Foy were their two third basemen, and that went about as well as you would expect it to. But they actually ended up getting Kevin Seitzer and Mike Moustakas to join them for this season. Whit Merrifield also joins them, so Kansas City, trying to get a little bit of an improvement. Their pitching was great last year. They just couldn't score. And they still don't really have much power, which is going to kind of hurt them in that division. Houston, California, I think may be a game that I'm going to do, because there's a few interesting guys who joined the league here for year two in that matchup. Houston most notably adds Jeff Bagwell. So Bagwell will take over first base from the Bob Watson, Glenn Davis scenario they had going last year. I think Glenn Davis actually got dropped down to AAA. Bob Watson is still going to be with the big club. Watson had a good year last year. He's probably going to get to DH a little bit, play a little first to spell Bagwell, a little bit of third. But the Angels, remember the Angels were the American League surprise team last year. The Angels went 20-8 in September to rally from 6 games out of a wild card spot to overtake 4 teams to take the second wild card spot. Then they went into the Bronx and beat the Yankees in the wild card game before getting swept by the A's in the division series. Hey, Steve, how are you, buddy? But the Angels got a pretty good draw in the last rookie draft. For one thing, they add Frank Tanana. So Frank Tanana is going to walk in as the ace of that Angels rotation. Give Andy Messersmith a little help at the top of that. But they also add Don Baylor. And Baylor is going to make the big club right out of the start, which of course not everybody who joined the team from the last rookie draft is able to, but Baylor rates well enough. Baylor is going to start with the big club. He's going to go to play left field. Brian Downing will slide to DH. Given that Brian Downing is a train wreck out there in left. And young Don Baylor could actually play the outfield a bit before he became the big burly Don Baylor that we all knew. Don Baylor was a very athletic guy in his early career. So Baylor and Tanana both help the Angels. Going down the list here, the Red Sox are really interesting because the Red Sox got a couple of good guys, but they're not going to break with the team as of yet. The Red Sox got Kevin Youkilis in the draft and Dwight Evans, but both of them are kind of blocked a little bit right now with the Red Sox because the Red Sox had such a good initial draft. I mean, the Red Sox had Betts, Reggie Smith, Ted Williams in the outfield. So Evans is going to ultimately crack the big club at some point, but he's going to start the year at AAA. And I'm going to get into the roster movement changes that I'm doing for year 2 from year 1 in a moment. The Mariners, I can't tell you one person who the Mariners added. I think the Mariners' big ad was like in the bullpen, like Arthur Rhodes, I think. So that the Mariners didn't add anybody huge for year 2. Mets and Texas open up. Seaver and Gaylord Perry, certainly a good pitching matchup there. The Mets' big addition in the offseason was getting Noah Syndergaard as a pitcher, but the Mets' rotation wasn't their problem last year. Again, the Mets got the wild card behind the Expos, who were the surprise team in the National League, who won that division. Texas did not get a good draft at all. They got virtually no help coming from their rookie draft last year, so I expect the Rangers to have another really rough season. Expos and Braves, good matchup there. Max Scherzer, Greg Maddux on opening day. That's another possibility for a broadcast from that day. The Expos will look to repeat their surprising performance from last season. And they got a couple of good ads in the draft too. Alfonso Soriano, who in doing the roster management, Soriano is actually going to break with the big club. Marquise Grissom is going to be waiting in the minors for somebody to falter or get injured or whatever and get a call up there. And Montreal's pitching was great last year. Atlanta's big ad was to what their strength was. They already have a great rotation. Atlanta's problem last year was they couldn't score. Despite Ronald Acuna having an MVP caliber season. But their big gain was Johnny Sane. So Johnny Sane is going to start off in AAA, and he'll kind of be first man up if somebody gets injured in the rotation. We'll see a couple of these other games. Philadelphia, the Phillies, add Chuck Klein in as he'll be a rookie for them this year. Miami got a great draw. I don't think Miami has enough to really make a push, but Miami added Gary Sheffield and both Sandy Alcantara and Jose Fernandez. So the Marlins arguably got, perhaps with the exception of the Indians, the best draft in last year's rookie draft. Those are all guys who are going to make an immediate impact this year. Because the Indians, in addition to Joss and Kluber, also add Kenny Lofton. But Lofton is only going to be platooning at the start because the Indians also have Larry Doby out there in center field. So Lofton at the start is going to be playing part-time, but I would expect that to probably evolve and change at some point. St. Louis, I should probably change that. That lists Dizzy Dean as the starter, but as a respect thing, I think. Bob Gibson, so they got Dizzy Dean as the rookie draft, so he's their big rookie pickup here for year 2. But Bob Gibson is still the ace of that staff, so Gibson should be the number 1 guy. So I can go in there and fix that. But even so, the Cardinals adding Dizzy Dean, very big. The big question for the Cardinals is, can the guys who came up big last year with kind of playing, good players who had great years in Jim Edmonds and Ray Lankford. Can those guys do it again? The Cardinals also will have Brian Jordan. Brian Jordan was supposed to originally be their right fielder last year, and Jordan tore his ACL. I think it was like the first couple of weeks of the season. They basically missed the whole year. And J.D. Drew played well, but now they've got Jordan and Drew there, so the Cardinals will be interesting. The Cubs didn't really add. And oh, wait a minute, I apologize. And that's one I want to go over, and I'm actually going to. I'll consider taking some feedback from you guys on this. There were a couple of trades. I'll get back to that in a minute. Let me go through the last few games, and then we'll talk trades and roster movement stuff and things like that. San Francisco opens up in Cincinnati. The defending National League champions go in to take on the Reds. The Reds added Rob Dibble. They added Ken Raffensperger to their rotation. The Reds' rotation last year was a bit spotty. They added Frank McCormick at first base, so McCormick at a minimum is going to share time with Sean Casey at the start. I think McCormick will ultimately overtake Casey. Yeah, I mean, Mario Soto, and again, Mario Soto was a fine pitcher, but Mario Soto, acing your staff in a league like this is a little bit of a push for the Reds. So they need things to break right. The Reds hung around for a while last year, but just kind of faded out. Our good friend Beatles Eternally's Pittsburgh Pirates. The Pirates just kind of added more solid guys, but they still aren't adding any of their greats. There's still, as Beatles pops into the chat there you go. How are you, Beatles? So the Pirates added Johnny Morrison, who's going to start off as the leader of the AAA pitching staff. He figures to get a promotion pretty quickly. Ginger Beaumont, Andy Van Slyke, all decent enough guys, but the Pirates in the initial draft are full of decent enough guys. The Pirates, with all the top great guys in their history, particularly offensively, they don't have Clemente yet. They don't have Kiner yet. They don't have Honus Wagner yet. They don't have any of the Wainers. Their big gain, don't have Pie Trainer. Their big gain for this year is Bill Mazeroski, who will take over at second base from Rennie Stennett. But that's their big gain. So the Pirates still have a ton of guys who eventually are going to come through who will be huge. I said it'll be funny if the Pirates just break out in one draft and they end up like bringing Kiner, Clemente, and Wagner in one shot and just completely throw the entire league out of whack. It's, and I agree with you, Beatles. I mean, look, he's great. Cyro, thank you, man. It's good to see you as always. Hope all is well with you, and we'll talk football stuff again. I'm sure soon. And now I'm trying to remember what my thought is. Oh yeah, of just of all those great guys potentially coming in down the line for the Pirates. And the Pirates hung around last year. The Pirates, like the Reds, they hung around. It was just the Cardinals. The Cardinals were the class of that division, and the Cardinals started off slowly, kind of like the Indians did in the American League. But then when the Cardinals heated up, just nobody was able to keep up with them. The Brewers add Paul Molitor, which is obviously big. So he joins Robin Yount there. But that's the that's the Brewers' biggest gain. I don't think that's going to be enough for the Brewers to really threaten for anything. Their pitching was surprisingly good last year. Brandon Woodruff, Corbin Burns, Cal Eldred is a pickup this year. He'll join Chris Bosio from last year. So I mean, their pitching kind of outperformed what I was expecting them to do last year, but they're still not good enough. Oh yeah, I got distracted from that Mazeroski point, Beals, that we were talking about. The difference between Look, Mazeroski obviously an elite defender, but is Mazeroski that huge an upgrade to like your for a team trying to go to a next step? After last season, is Mazeroski such a huge jump over Rennie Stennett that he's going to add, 5 wins to your team? I'm not really sure that he is. Um, Stennett wasn't great last year, but I don't think Mazeroski is going to give you much offense. So you'll be better defensively at second base. But what they really need is that they need to get a little bit more pop in that order. Bob Elliott had a really good year for them, but I'm not sure that Elliott is going to do that same offense again. So it's really Pop Stargell carrying the day for the offense and hoping enough of the other guys can kind of nickel and dime their way and come up with some big hits, Jake Beckley and guys like that. So they'll be interesting. Arizona, Colorado, Randy Johnson, the National League Outstanding Pitcher winner last season, edging out Tom Seaver and Clayton Kershaw for that award. Johnson was terrific. Him and Schilling were great atop the Diamondbacks rotation. The Rockies didn't really add anybody huge. They helped the bullpen a bit. They got Steve Reed, and Steve Reed was a very good reliever for a very long time. And they added Jeff Francis, but Jeff Francis is incredibly injury prone. He's solid when he's all right when he's healthy, but Jeff Francis really injury prone. Not a huge gain for the Rockies, so they're going to have their same problems as last year of just not really being able to pitch. The Padres remain, in my opinion, the worst team in the league. They got Negro League pitcher Nip Winters, who goes immediately to the top of their rotation, which is nice. But they drafted from a strength. They brought in Adrian Gonzalez, but they were already loaded up at first base. They had Jack Clark and Nate Colbert. Colbert was exceptional last year. So now the Padres have moved things around a little bit. Ryan Klesko is going to play left. Again, another guy who plays first base. Klesko is going to play left. Jack Clark is going to become their everyday right fielder, not play first base at all. And then Colbert and Gonzalez are going to handle first base and DH. Gonzalez is actually probably going to end up sitting against lefties. And the Dodgers, the Dodgers got a nice one. They got Preacher Rowe and Van Mungo to join into their rotation. So the Dodgers are going to make some impact there. I still think the Giants win that division, but I do not think the Giants are going to run away on the Dodgers again this season. That's a kind of a half-hearted prediction. But I think you might see a dogfight out there in that NL West this year. So those are the potential opening night matchups. Again, I'll do Cleveland and Oakland. Yes, Mungo's temper is legendary, and he was another one of those pitchers. Struck out a ton, walked a ton. So when Mungo is on, he's going to be devastating, but when he's off, he's gonna struggle a bit. So we'll do Cleveland, Oakland, and then I want to make sure I do a National League game. I'll probably do San Francisco, Cincinnati, just as a shout out to the defending National League champs. And then we'll see Houston, California, Montreal, Atlanta, or St. Louis, Chicago. I'll probably do one of those 3 games if I have time to do a third on Friday. And the format will be the same. Each broadcast that I do after that will be a game of the week format. I'll do multiple weeks in a real life week. I'm hoping to probably do like 3 baseball broadcasts a week. At a minimum, I may even get to do more than that. It all depends on time. But now that my older 2 boys are back up at college, my other one is in high school all day, so I don't have as much bustle around the house during the day before I go to work. It's really just a matter of how much stuff I have to take care of, and once I do all the stuff I need to take care of, run out and run my errands, take care of stuff around the house, and walk the dog and stuff like that. Any time after that before I go to work is mine. So however much time I have, this is what my favorite thing is to do to have, with my free time. So looking forward to see how year 2 shakes out. So now a couple of things as to, I was talking before about roster movement and stuff like that. If you follow the Legend Sports universe, not just with the Franchise Stars Baseball League, but with all of them, all the sports that I do, I really don't get involved in roster management very much. I kind of let the game engine, I create the ratings, I create the teams, I create the concepts, and then I just kind of put it out there into the universe and see how it plays out. And I broadcast the games with you, or I do write ups, or I cover them however I cover them. And that's how I kind of bring it to life. And that's the fun part of me, is the creation and watching it with everybody and trying to paint the picture and the scene and the stories and all that kind of stuff, and tell the stories of this world that I've created. But I decided that I want to get a little bit more involved in the roster management of this, as far as making a few more intelligent decisions as to call ups and send downs, rotations and lineups and stuff like that. So one of the things, if you're familiar with the league, that I had talked about last season was, and I said it was going to be my big focus for the off season, is that long relievers were getting used too much and going too long. And they were kind of being overused. You had long relievers going, 3 innings with a bit of regularity, but just kind of seems to be, now that I've tested it a bit more, it just kind of seems to be a glitch in the game a bit. But it's also probably tied a bit to how I've structured the Franchise Stars Baseball League. So each team's, real quick to go through this again if you're unfamiliar, each team has a 100-player master pool. And on the pitching side, that pool consists of 25 starters and 15 relievers from their history. The opening 40 was 12 starters and 11 starters and 6 relievers at the start. So your opening 26-man roster would basically have 5 starters in your rotation, and then another 2 or 3 starters, guys who obviously have heightened stamina, going into your bullpen with your top few relievers. And what was happening was, well, just for an example, one of the best examples. Let's go to the Braves. Somebody like Dick Rudolph. So Rudolph last year, through 53 games in relief, he factored into 24 decisions in that, and threw 136 innings. The same thing happened with a couple of other starters, Harry Staley and Tom Glavine, who were in that also. So those guys who were in, they get put in the long relief slots because they have the best stamina. But then the game would start overusing them a bit. So the guys who are real relievers warranted observing that if I was going to let that continue, the development and the growth of those players would start getting stunted a bit as starters, both, and the relievers who weren't getting used. So what? Yes, Todd, exactly. That's mid-70s stats, which in one sense I don't mind, but I wanted it to be a little bit more. I don't want the relievers who are real relievers to go to waste that much. So I'm kind of trying to find a balance with it. And what I ultimately ended up doing was, you'll see now each team has 10 starters in their organization. Top 5 guys in the main rotation, and then another guy's filling out the AAA rotation. The lowest starters beyond those guys are now being trained to be relievers, and I cut their stamina down in half, and I found that was getting them to be used more like real relievers would be used. And they'll still pitch a lot. and they'll still be active, but you're not going to see that 3 inning, 4 inning relief stint on a regular basis that you were seeing last year. So I really think it's going to be much improved. Not necessarily perfect, and as always with this, there's always stuff that I can tweak a little bit more, and I'll always be observing things to change. But I'm really how the bullpens are being used at this point. But I want to navigate how call ups and send downs happen, and I want to handle all the lineups. So, or at least who is on the roster to be put in the lineups. So I'll let the computer generate the lineup, but I'm deciding who the guys are who are on the big club and who are at AAA. And just to make sure that the one thing the game loved doing, the game would carry like 14-man pitching staffs. That's unnecessary, especially given so many older players in the league who have really peaked out staminas and stuff like that, who can pitch for days. You don't need a 14-man pitching staff. So I made the roster a little bit more educated, where now it's 14 position players and 12 pitchers on the 26-man staff. I'm also hoping that that's going to possibly lead to a little bit better use of pinch hitters in games. The game does not use pinch hitters very much, so I'm hoping that that's going to change a little bit. I'm going to try to not interject myself into in-game decisions. I think I only did it once last year, and that was in the playoffs, the Giants A's World Series game, where it made Sam Mertis pinch run at first with the winning run on third base, in the form of Buster Posey, and they put Mertis on first to stay out of the double play instead of putting him on third to run for the super slow Posey and make it so he could score on a sac fly. And thankfully, it didn't impact the game. But that was really the only time that I can remember all of year one of the FSBL that I jumped in and manually made an in-game decision. So I'm going to try to stay out of that. But that's, what I'm trying to get at here. I just felt like I could do a better job of roster management than what the game does. So that's what we're going to shoot for here in year two. Other focuses, I adjusted sliders a little bit, increased the outfield arms. I decreased the outfield arm strength slider one notch, and I increased the base running speed one notch, hopefully to get a fewer guys thrown out, taking the extra base. Not so much trying to stretch singles into doubles, but going first and third, and most often trying to go second to home on a single. Guys get waved in aggressively, and the one that I actually really think happens the most, slow guys trying to score from first on a double when they really shouldn't be. It's almost like the game mechanic just says anybody should be able to score from first on a double, and it will send slow guys against good arms who it shouldn't. So I'm trying to find a way to neutralize that. It didn't happen to the point where it was bad last year, but it definitely felt like something I could improve. So that's what those were kind of my two focuses as to things I wanted to improve for year two. And I'm sure I'll find another two things that I want to improve for year three, based on what I see here in year two. The advantage of a project that I intend to go on for 20 plus seasons, there will always be something to adjust. And check in the chat there. Oh, I appreciate that, Tex. Well, it's just it's a love, man. I enjoy doing this stuff, and I enjoy the ratings, I enjoy the creation, and I enjoy the deep dives and all that stuff, and I enjoy talking shop. It's why, and he was very complimentary to my stream last night about what I do, and it's like why I like watching as much of Steve's stuff as I do, for the same thing. Like, I know what goes into that. I know what goes into what he does, and he knows what goes into what I do, and it's just, if you decide that you're passionate about doing this and you really want to do it well, it's a load of fun. And yes, it's work, but when it clicks, it's like, yes, this is great. I could not have asked year one of the FSBL to go better than it did. It went better than I possibly could have imagined. Not just because the World Series and the playoffs were so great and exciting and everything like that. I got super fortunate there, but just the stats for everybody. Like, I had very few players where I was like, whoa, that really went out of whack. He performed way better or way worse than I was expecting. You know, so I was very, very happy with that. Todd asked, "Do you adjust ratings throughout the season?" No, no, I do not. I do not adjust ratings during a season. I will adjust ratings after a season. One of the things I talked about in my stream last night is how the game handles potential, and players will develop or regress as a season goes on, which is great. And for the most part, it does it well. But sometimes a guy gets a really big boost or a really big drop. The example I used last night was Jim Edmonds. So Jim Edmonds had hit high 30s. I'm trying to remember. I think he hit 40 home runs in his career at least once. He may have done it twice, like 40 or 41 or something like that. Or he hit high 30s at least. And he hit 300 a few times. So I'm expecting, look, a peak Jim Edmonds is going to get to a little bit over 300 and maybe get to that 40 home run plateau. In a greats league, I kind of figured he'd probably top out somewhere around 35 or whatever. Well, not only did he get there, but he got there quickly. He had, and that's when I was talking about the Cardinals guys getting career years last year. So Edmonds hit 40, I want to say he hit 41 homers, and he batted 337, which was, again, he hit 300 a few times, so it's not like, oh my goodness, this is terrible, but it's like Jim Edmonds at 337 is a bit of a push. So after the season, I'm like, all right, so what about his attributes got him to that point? Was it just dumb luck? Because sometimes that'll happen where a player's ratings dictate, hey, listen, this guy should hit like 270, and just he'll hit the it's basically the equivalent of if you play Status Pro or any of those things, and a guy is programmed to, or his card says that he should be like a 270 hitter, luck of the card draw or whatever, the cards like him, and the guy hits 300 that year. That'll occasionally happen, and that's the nature of pretty much any game. But in Edmonds' case, it bolstered his contact against righties by like 3 points, which was no big deal. But it bolstered his contact against lefties as a lefty hitter by like 11. He just got a huge boost. So you can imagine what that would do. It's basically a 10% ratings increase, and probably actually a little bit more than that. It's probably in Edmonds' case, because he was not very good against lefties, it's probably like a 15% increase in his ability to hit lefties. Well, that can get you another 15 or 20 points during the course of the season. So after the season was done, I had a sheet, and it's on my laptop, so I can't show it now because now I'm operating off of the PlayStation. But, and I'm trying to remember exactly how I did it, but it was like if a guy was 10% or 10 points or 10 percentage things outside of what I deemed the acceptable range, I dropped his rating points in the game by a half of that or a quarter of that. So like if he was 10% of an outlier, I would drop his ratings by, I don't remember. I don't think I did it half. It was probably like a quarter because I didn't want to overcorrect. I just want to kind of temper it a little bit. If a guy develops well over the course of this, that's the what if aspect of this. I'm cool with that. I just don't want it to be outlandish. So that's when I temper the things, and I did that with pitchers for K ratings and walk ratings and stuff like that after the season too. So that's why when I take these few weeks between seasons, that's the stuff I'm working on, adjusting those ratings, developing ratings for the new rookies, and then of course creating the players and their faces and all that kind of stuff in the game, which is a whole other matter entirely. If there's anything else, oh, okay. One other thing I want to touch on, and then if we're done, great. But if and then after that, if you guys have any questions or stuff you want to see or whatever like that, I'll be happy to do it. Um, Trades. So if you remember right, when I got to the trade deadline in year one, no trades happened. And that wasn't really a shock because everybody had multi-year contracts, so there were no free agents at that point because everybody was assigned a contract for how many years they were with the team they were assigned to in real life. So if a guy was with the Braves for 5 years, he got a 5-year contract in this. And that's how I did it for everybody. So you don't have any of those, all right, we got to trade this guy who we're going to lose as a free agent at the trade deadline or whatever kind of situations. So there were no deals made last year. But one of the things I was hoping was that in the off season before year two and in year two, you'd start to see some trades. And you do. The trade AI is. I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. It's decent but erratic, I guess. Um, the big thing, and this has been a video game, and it's true whether it's out of the park or console gaming or whatever. But one of the things that these games have always struggled with is making the hey, I'll give you I can't give you one crummy guy for your one really good guy, but if I give you three crappy guys, maybe their totals add up to enough that now you'll give me the good player for my three crappy guys. Um, it's sports talk. It's like sports talk radio trades. Here are these three guys who we all want to run out of town. Let's go and trade them, to bring Aaron Judge onto our team. And it doesn't do it a ton, but it does it enough that I feel like I want to kind of monitor it a bit. And what I decided, again, as part of tempering, not getting too involved with the management, but still having a bit of oversight, is I decided if a trade involves, because listen, bad trades have happened all throughout baseball history. So I don't want to sit there and veto every single trade that comes through that I think is a bad trade. Because what's the fun in that? I want to say, oh wow, this trade could blow up in this team's face. Like that's cool. That's part of doing this. I like it. But I said I would have to weigh in and analyze any trade that was made involving either somebody who was a Hall of Famer or somebody who is the top rated player at their position for their team at present in the game. So the game made a few trades this offseason, and I'll actually throw a couple of these out to the community of whether you think I should let them stand or turn them around, and we can kind of. This is I like, and I've talked about doing this before, and I haven't really had an opportunity to about getting the community involved in it a little bit. But what I'll this is going to kind of be the first situation where I can do some of that, and you can also see a bit of what I'm talking about here. So, completed trades. All right, all transactions. Let's go to trades. So, and we're just going to kind of backtrack over the winter. And you'll see I'll mention ones that I reversed and ones that I let go. Thank you, Nathaniel. I appreciate that. I appreciate the comment. I think it's just stuff that if when I like something, when I'm passionate about doing something, and I throw myself into a project, I want to make sure I can do it really, really well. Because I enjoy it because it's my hobby. But I don't like half-assing stuff. So it's one of the reasons why when Cyro and I were talking before about me doing this franchise stars project for football for Madden, I haven't jumped into that yet because I don't feel like I can commit the time to it that I would need to really make that project what it should be. So I'm not going to do it unless I really feel confident that, hey, I can make this what I want this to be. But I appreciate the kind words, truly. Thank you. All right, so let's look at this first trade. And again, we're kind of working backwards from the offseason. So the Mariners and the Marlins made a deal, and I let this one stand. The Mariners dealt catcher Cal Raleigh to the Marlins for Preston Wilson, Aaron Boone, and Trevor Rogers. Nobody in that deal is great. I don't really know what the Mariners would have a use for Preston Wilson for when they've already got Ken Griffey Jr. out there in center. But they have no problem dealing Cal Raleigh. The game really likes Kenji Jojima because he was so good defensively. So I let this trade stand because this is a 3-for-1, but it's not 3 crappy guys for a great guy. It's 3 mediocre guys for a mediocre guy who's better than who the Marlins currently had at catcher, because they don't have Charles Johnson yet or anybody like that. I think it might be like Mike Redmond or somebody like that. So that's the kind of trade that I can kind of rationalize, so I let that trade hold up. Yankees and Giants made a deal. The Giants traded Kevin Mitchell to the Yankees. Kevin Mitchell and Bob Shaw, I should say. Shaw pitched like 8 games in relief for the Giants last year. No big deal there. Mitchell was really good until the beginning of June, and then he got hurt. If you remember late last season, Brandon Belt and Gary Matthews formed a lefty-righty DH platoon for the Giants. That came to pass because of Kevin Mitchell's injury. He tore up his knee. He was out for the year. So it's Mitchell off of an injury and Bob Shaw for second baseman Jimmy Williams. Now, I didn't reverse this one at the time, but this one I kind of weigh reversing only because I don't know not just Kevin Mitchell's potential, but I don't know what use the Giants would have for Jimmy Williams. Jimmy Williams is an okay player, but let me get to the Giants here. The Giants already have Jeff Kent and Robbie Thompson, and they picked up Newt Allen, who's a defensive standout wizard, Negro Leaguer, in the rookie draft. So what do you need Jimmy Williams for there? It's just one of those trades that doesn't really seem to make sense. Again, Jimmy Williams is fine. He had a cup of coffee with the Yankees last year, 257, 5 homers, 12 RBIs. So, he just doesn't seem to be something that's worth giving up Kevin Mitchell if Mitchell's healthy. Certainly giving up Mitchell and a reliever when the Giants bullpen, they were okay during the regular season, but in the postseason, the Giants bullpen was terrible. So I'm kind of thinking Mitchell is a head case. He's fine for the Yankees. All right, that's also fair. But the Yankees, from the Yankees' standpoint, the trade made sense because the Yankees drafted Joe Gordon and Willie Randolph for second base. So they now have a surplus at second base because they also had Gil McDougall. So the Yankees giving up a second baseman makes perfect sense. They were trading from a spot of surplus. That's fine. So what I might do there is say, okay, because I have 2 options. I can three options technically. I can let a trade stand the way it is. I can veto the trade and undo it. Or I can say, all right, we're going to make this trade a trade involving all of these guys, but we're going to add other guys to it to make the trade a little bit more logical and do things that way, which is kind of how I lean towards that Yankees trade. Because, like I said, from the Yankees' perspective, it makes sense as far as the reason they're giving up Jimmy Williams because they have depth at the position. I just feel like the Giants have to get a little more out of that than just Williams. Let me go back. I'm on the wrong screen. Sorry there. There we go. Transactions. All right. Completed. Go back to trades. All right. This is the one that I overrode this deal. For some reason, the Indians want to trade Emmanuel Clase. Clase was very good for the Tribe as their closer last year, and they traded him to the Tigers. The contract or cap, Todd asked if the contract or cap money have anything to do with these. Cap shouldn't be anything at this point because everybody started with the league minimum. So everybody's making minimum wage basically in baseball sense. So Clase only had a 1-year contract. So he could become, what people kind of don't realize if you haven't played the show. People talk about all the management, the stuff in out of the park and front office and financials and all that stuff. The show has that stuff. It's got Rule 5 draft. You've only got 3 player options for your players to send them up and down between the majors and the minors. It's got arbitration. It's got all of that stuff into it. So it could be the Indians worried, okay, are we going to have to give Clase a lot more money if we keep him? Let's go and shop him around. But dealing Clase to the Tigers for Norm Cash, who is their top guy who they got in this rookie draft, and Tom Timmerman. Timmerman's a decent enough reliever. I actually think Timmerman had a pretty bad season last year, but he's got decent potential. Timmerman will be okay. But the Indians, they don't need a first baseman because they have Jim Thome. And they don't have anybody really set to step in for Emmanuel Clase. So it just kind of felt like a deal that I couldn't find any way to justify it, really, for either team. I mean, the Tigers had so many problems. They weren't going to deal a potential 30 home run guy. They might have considered doing that for a starter, but I don't think they wouldn't do that for a reliever. So I undid that trade, and I decided that one didn't work. Padres get Cheo Hernandez and Lee Tannehill. Cheo Hernandez was a Negro League pitcher. I think he was Cuban. He played in one of the Cuban Negro Leagues. But they got him and Lee Tannehill for Seth Smith. That's really kind of a nothing trade. So I was fine letting that trade stand. Tigers trade that I overruled. Blue Jays and Mets. The Mets traded Jim Hickman, Ron Taylor, and Bobby Jones to get Cavan Biggio. Cavan Biggio, decent enough. He's got a bit of potential. None of those guys really factored in for the Mets at this point. Bobby Jones was a rookie, was going to be a rookie for this season. He came in the rookie draft last year. So I don't really know. Cavan Biggio is another one of those guys where in a bunch of these sims, the Blue Jays kept on wanting to trade him for whatever reason. Probably because he's got that 1-year deal kind of thing. Because I guess he probably only played in the majors 1 year before this season. Because remember, this project all started before this season began. So, Clase has a 1-year contract, not a 2-year contract. So I think that's playing a part of it a bit. I mean, again, Hickman doesn't factor in for the Mets. Ron Taylor probably should. I think Taylor had a bad season last year, but Taylor, the Mets bullpen was shaky last year, so and Bobby Jones. Bobby Jones is on a normal league staff. Bobby Jones is a nice depth starter, but in a league like this, Bobby Jones isn't really a factor. I don't think this is, it's not a trade that I would do, but it's not a trade that I find so ridiculous that I'm going to worry about jumping in to undo it. Rockies and Cubs. Now this is the one. This is the one where I'm really going to kind of be curious about people's feedback, and I'll take people's feedback in on this because I can vacillate on this one a bit, but it rubs me a bit wrong. And there's a logic to it, but I still don't know if either side makes it. So the Cubs offense was terrible last season. Their big rookie pickup in this draft was Lee Smith. So they could have gotten a closer. They also got Javier Baez. They then made the decision to trade Smith and Baez along with Glenn Beckert, who's going to be a backup second baseman, for them. Even though they're kind of weak at second base too, but Glenn Beckert was no big deal. But Smith and Baez to the Rockies for Carlos Gonzalez. Now, I get the logic of, hey, we're going to trade these guys who haven't done anything yet to try to fit and who are good to try to get a good guy who fills a need for us in Carlos Gonzalez. They absolutely could use Carlos Gonzalez's offense. Do you deal Lee Smith for that? Even though Smith hasn't done anything yet, but he's your top pick. Are you trading Lee Smith and Baez? Javier Baez is overrated, but regardless, the Lee Smith one is really the one that jumps out at me. I don't know if I can deal with trading a borderline Hall of Fame potential guy like Lee Smith with an A potential, even if it's to get Carlos Gonzalez. However, I would consider, this is one of those deals where do I just... Right, exactly, Todd, exactly. We know the future of Lee Smith, but the game doesn't. Now, what the game does know, and this is where we get into the fun part of this. Let's go back here. So we're going to go, and the advantage of me now being involved in the rosters, in the management stuff, is I can do this. All right, so let's get down to Lee Smith. So you see Smith is an A potential guy. So now if you put Smith into this trade, if you're the Rockies now and you're offering this, so you're offering Lee Smith, who did I just forget? Oh, wrong team. All right. Glenn Beckert, who ranks as your fourth guy on the depth chart as a Rockies second baseman. So he's not really a big pickup. And, oh geez, who the hell? I just blanked out. Oh, and Javier Baez. Now, you picked up Javier Baez. Javier Baez is a B potential guy. That's fine. He's going to jump over Christian Guzman. Don't worry about that. Baez would bypass him. And see, and this is the other part of this, and I wasn't thinking about this before. This makes a bit more. This might be a factor into it a little bit. I have to offer contract extensions because on the new draftees, I can't set their contracts as of yet. So everybody signs that initial rookie deal, and then they become regular arbitration eligible, whatever, all the regular rules apply. But I can't ink them to 6-year, 7-year, 10-year contracts Troy Tulowitzki has a 10-year deal because I assigned that from the roster set. Now operating in the game, I'm not importing these guys. I'm drafting fictional players and then changing those players to the real life guys. So all the new guys who were just taken, Javier Baez just has a 1-year deal. You don't have him locked up. If Baez and Smith were locked up, does the game still make that trade? Maybe it doesn't. So I think what I might do before Friday, I'll do this. It's too late tonight to do it. And I don't want to do one and then not do the rest of them. But I might undo all of these trades, try to do the offer players extensions thing to get them to the right contract lengths, and then propose the trades back and see if the game accepts them again as a valid trade. Because I have a feeling, now that it just jumped out at me as I got to Baez there and I saw the 1-year contract, that might be a factor that it's taking into account in evaluating these deals. Because if you just add Baez to that, and now let's go to the Cubs. And let's put Carlos Gonzalez. So now, that message up at the top, trade feedback. Select players from both teams to view feedback and offer a trade. So whatever the answer is that it gives up there, once I ask Gonzalez, is going to be the Cubs answering me as the Rockies, proposing this trade to them. Let's see what happens. We're definitely interested in making this deal. Okay, so the Cubs now are very interested in undoing the deal. So, if it's going to, that makes me feel like I'm going to undo this deal and then I'll fix the contract and then I'm going to see what it says. And I'm wondering, it may not have anything to do with it, because again, it's not like Javier Baez is a free agent after one season. It's still going to be going through the arbitration process and all that kind of stuff. He's not eligible for that for a couple of years, so he would basically qualify for an automatically renewable contract at this point. So it's not really a free agent kind of situation, but I still wonder if, look, the show is great, and I love this game, and I've had great fun with it, and it does 95% of the stuff it does right. But the 5% things that it gets wrong are frustrating kind of things. And I wonder if this is a situation where when it comes to trades, the game is just reading that one in the contract as the guy is a pending free agent and not reading it as this is just his rookie deal. We are still going to have control of this guy for at least 3 and potentially 6 years. So, and that's what I'm going to do. Any of the proposed deals that had a rookie involved in them, I'm going to undo. And then I will see if I can offer them extensions, sign them to the length of time that I want them with the team, and then I'll go to repropose the contract and see what happens. And if it still accepts them, then I'll do it. And if it's a bad trade, it's a bad trade. But then I'll at least let it stand. Or at least make a modified deal. So like if I do all that, so we'll undo this here. So now if I go and fix the contracts and repropose that trade and it accepts it, I may go in and say, all right, can we add somebody else to this deal that might make it make a little bit more sense from the Cubs perspective. It probably wouldn't have to be a huge guy, but it would have to be somebody at a mid-tier who fills a need for the Cubs to justify offering Smith. And if I don't feel like I can do that, then I'll just void the trade. I'll just void the trade entirely. So again, I don't mind a low-level bad trade, but I really want to try to minimize the top-level bad trades as this goes forward. The trade part of it's going to be fun. I'm excited about trades and free agency and all that stuff, but I don't want ridiculous trades to be something that hinders the league. All right, so that'll be my work for tomorrow before Friday's opening day, and that's fine. I'll have plenty of time to do it. I don't think that's not going to take very long, honestly. Um, and uh, and that is that. So if anybody has anything that they want to see or a question, feel free. And but other than that, I will probably the the game I'll definitely do for opening day is that Indians A's ALCS rematch. Um, Second game would probably be the Giants Reds game, and then there's a few options there. I think I'm leaning. I think I'm leaning towards the Astros Angels one. I want to see Bagwell. I want to see Frank Tanana lead that Angels rotation. Um, and Don Baylor join the Angels. I think that one could be an interesting matchup, and gives the Angels a shout out for their fine work last season. Either Astros Angels or Expos Braves will probably give the Expos the shout out for their surprise season last year too. So either of those two games would probably be the third one if I am able to do a third. Thanks, Beatles. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm hoping. I mean, again, I got really, really lucky. Year one set the bar so high for this going well, but I'm looking forward to it. I love the new guys who are coming into the league, and I love knowing how many more great guys aren't even here yet. So I'm looking forward to it. Place your bets now, though. How are we ending this? I believe Beatles. I believe you've already said you think the A's are going to repeat. I mean, consider this. The A's are going to send 19-game winner Jack Quinn, who won 19 games, as their number 5. Jack Quinn is going to start this year at AAA because the A's got Eddie Plank as a rookie to throw into their big league rotation. They're the most balanced team in the league. But again, the Yankees getting Whitey Ford, the A's getting Joss and Kluber atop that rotation helps them tremendously. I still think the A's are the class, but I don't think the A's. I think the A's are going to be tested. I do. I think not in the division. The A's are still going to run away with that division. I mean, the Astros can be a bit better. The Angels might take another step forward, but the A's are going to run away with that AL West. I don't know how, until free agency really starts kicking in this league, anybody's going to have a shot at making a dent on the A's in that American League West. I feel like they're going to win that division for several years until free agency really becomes a role. Getting out of the American League, that's another matter entirely. I mean, the Indians almost knocked them off. The Yankees and the Red Sox are certainly capable of beating them. National League, I still think the Giants are probably the class there. I'll tell you though, I like the Cardinals. Getting Dizzy Dean to pair with Gibson atop that Cardinals rotation, and that Cardinals offense is so good and so balanced. I think the Cardinals might come out of the National League this year, and that's a big ask. That's a big ask because I still think the Giants are the best. So if I had to bet my money right now, I honestly bet on a repeat. But I think the Indians and the Cardinals are threats to the A's and the Giants going forward. So with that, we're going to wrap this up, I think. I appreciate you guys, as always, checking in. And again, this is the stuff I love. I love doing the game broadcast, but I love kind of talking shop a little bit and stuff like that. This is a hell of a lot of fun. So I appreciate you guys. Beatles, Todd, Tex, Bernard was here. Kind of World's Worst Gamer was here. Nathaniel was here. Cyro, Gary Sorrell. Just a pack of luminaries. Steve Tate popped in earlier on. scrolling back up, see if I missed anybody. I don't think I missed anybody. If I did, I suck and I apologize. But thank you guys so much for checking in. I know you guys in the chat at least subscribe already. Bang that like button if you would be so kind. And I may be back with something tomorrow. I think it's going to be a football broadcast tomorrow. I don't know if there'll be a baseball one. And then opening day on Friday. I know Steve is planning on doing a Howie Shanks broadcast, Shanks playoff broadcast at some point on Friday. I'm probably going to do the opening broadcast sometime either 11 a.m. or noon. And then I'm probably just going to go back to back with those two. And then if I do a third one, it would be late Friday night. So if that kind of helps anybody, as far as their plans, I appreciate people planning around stuff that I do. I know I try to do it as well, planning around. I don't like overlapping. I know we all like supporting each other's stuff and each other's channels. So we don't like fighting each other for time. So I figure if I say what times I'm planning, like there's going to be a window probably from like 3:30 until at least 10 that I'm probably not going to be broadcasting. So I'm sure another fine baseball broadcaster or broadcasters, Steve, Dwayne, Beatles, Bernard, if he's back from family time and all that stuff, will fill that gap. So hopefully Friday is going to be a really fun and thorough baseball day for all of us who love this hobby. So again, thank you guys so much for the support and the chat. Be good to each other, guys. Have a great night, and we'll talk soon.